Bullshit.
You're listening to the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Doug Northcook. He is the CEO of Decoder Design, but he's also started, sold, maintained, and kept businesses of all different types, and just an exciting guy to talk to. And we're here talking about no BS marketing. And to do that, I often start off with the definition of marketing as we see it at Mass Solutions. And it's about clearly defining your target markets and then doing the necessary marketing intel to find out what they want, develop it if you don't already have it, or tweak what you already have so you can give it to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay. Then you tell them about it again and again. But the vast majority of no BS, I shouldn't say the vast majority of no BS, the vast majority of BS marketers focus on that, telling them about it again and again. In fact, many people think that is marketing, just the telling people about something again and again. But you really need to start with clearly defining those target audiences, doing the marketing intel to find out what they want, develop it and give it to them when and where they want it at the price they're willing to pay. Then the telling them about it can be the fun, creative part. So Doug, you've heard my definition of marketing. Think back to what has been your most amazing moment in your experience with marketing, messaging, or communications. What's your biggest marketing or messaging success?
Sure. I'd say my biggest success related to this that's kind of unique to me is working on a project about 2 years ago, trying to kind of reframe how specifically nonprofits and foundations and political action groups think about marketing online, and trying to reframe part of the marketing discussion as a customer service discussion, which I think is something that people so often leave out of thinking about marketing, when in actuality marketing is best served by really great customer service. And you see that with big brands time and again, that they're able to turn a corner when they rethink their customer service. But one project that I worked on in particular that was kind of born out of my sister and I working together with a large political action group, they were trying to figure out how to optimize their donation process. So they're trying to, they do these huge pay-per-click marketing buys to bring people to a page where they can fill out a donation form to donate to this cause. And on every form like that, you see huge abandonment rates. So people will come to the page, they'll start filling out the form, they'll get bored, they'll get confused, they'll get tired, whatever it is, or they'll get distracted, and they'll leave the site immediately. So my sister and I had this idea to take what we were seeing as a trend in customer service, which was live chat implementation to increase conversions. We were seeing this time and again with clients we were working with at the time, that they, we were helping them implement these live chat solutions, and they were seeing their conversion rate increase sometimes by a few percentage points, which is huge in the e-commerce space. And we wondered, could we take that same idea of live chat for e-commerce, which is basically customer service as marketing, and could we apply that to the donation experience? And what we saw was a decrease in exit rate on pages, an increase in conversion rate, and an increase in the average size of the donation. So what you had is people were getting into the form, they were filling out half the form and pausing, and then if that happened, they were being pinged by a live chat representative who would then ask them, hey, do you have any questions? Can I answer any questions for you about the organization? Or, are you a recurring donor? Here's some new programs we have that we're running, and we really appreciate your donation. And people most of the time would be like, thank you so much for interacting with me. It's so nice to be thanked. And oftentimes those recurring people would actually increase their gift. So you had this really, it was a really positive effect. And, we were able to roll that out for a few other people as well. But, trying to help them, but also our other clients at the time. And I do this with my clients now, that, if you can find people where they already are and meet them there, that's going to be the best possible way to reach your customers and to increase the value of your existing customers.
I can see that working. And whenever I've seen a live chat on anything that I was purchasing, it does bring you a sense of comfort and calmness as the buyer.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much data on this now, especially from an e-commerce perspective, that live chat just does increase conversion rates for most types of e-commerce businesses. And what I believe and what I think I've seen in some of the work and some of the research that I've done is that can be effective for a lot of different businesses, not just for e-commerce businesses, but for large scale services companies. I've worked with a couple of companies to implement live chat for lead acquisition. So instead of somebody filling out a contact form, they will actually just chat with someone on the website who will gather their contact information and forward that to a salesperson who will, call them within the hour. So you're able to make that personal connection with a customer immediately. Because somebody's already there. They've already raised their hand and said, hey, I'm on your website. So they're already clearly interested to some level. And if you can reach out and say, hey, you seem like someone who's interested in our product. Do you have any questions? Instead of them going looking for the answers to their questions on their own and getting lost on your website or getting, tricked into going somewhere else, you can kind of capture them immediately and oftentimes convert that into a sale or a lead. So,
Doug, pick a tool or a tip you'd offer that'll help our audience tell their story, craft their message, or communicate to internal and external target audiences. It could be a tool like Google Trends to generate content ideas, your favorite book, blog, or productivity resource, or a tip on how to approach their career, whatever you think might help our listeners.
Yeah. I believe that there's no single tool or no single resource. I'm a big fan of the idea that you have to be cross-discipline in your research and in the information that you intake. And one of the resources that I find myself recommending most often, especially to people in high-level marketing positions, is this magazine called Monocle, which is a British magazine. They have correspondents all over the world, and they cover design, affairs, and culture. But what they do and what they provide is a global perspective on what's happening in hospitality, marketing, design, politics, and gives you kind of the best of the best and the worst of the worst. So this current issue that I just got in the mail yesterday is all about hospitality, customer service, and looking at that from a marketing perspective. So they have, here are the top 3 brands in the world based on the surveys that we've done, based on their customer service, like the most beloved brands. And I think it's Apple, BMW, and Audi, maybe. But being able to see, not just what's happening in my, not just who are my direct competitors, not just who am I competing with nationally, but what is a company similar to mine doing in Japan? Or what is a company in a completely different sector from mine doing to innovate? How are they approaching innovation? And what can I learn from how they're innovating? And I found that as an incredibly helpful resource to me. And it's a pretty daunting magazine. It comes out 10 times a year, and it's almost 300 pages per issue.
It's basically a book that comes out every month.
Yeah, it is. And I read every issue cover to cover. And I found it, not just, entertaining and fascinating, but usually I come away with, 1 or 2 big takeaways that are, new ways of me for thinking about, how people, how a huge ad firm in Brazil is approaching a rebrand for, a company in Colombia, that I'm never going to be able to find all that information directly myself, but they provide this really amazing curated way of just seeing what's going on in the world and, giving you these little snippets of, here are people that are doing this in a really unique and interesting way. And I think it's really easy to kind of pull some of those out and see, this is how I can apply what this company's doing to what I'm doing.
It's Monocle. We'll have it on the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go down that path of reading. About how many hours a day do you think you read?
Do I read? I probably read about 2.5 hours a day. Every day.
And what do you read? What's your biggest source of news and information? Is there a particular 2 or 3 websites?
I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. I mean, I read, I'm usually trying to work my way through an issue of Monocle. I'm usually reading some sort of, either, design thinking book from somebody who does kind of high level design consulting. And usually that's somebody who works at a company like IDEO, or, previous engineers at, big technology companies, for kind of aggregated tech news, just so I can keep kind of up with what's going on there. I use a website called Hacker News, which is a aggregated, upvoted list of articles that's curated by a startup incubator called Y Combinator. And it's pretty heavily tech focused, but it's usually if there's a big change going on at Google or a big change going on with a coding language or a web standard, you're going to find out about it really quickly on Hacker News. So I try to read through the handful of the top 10 articles on there at least a bit every day, and then I have I read everything that Google puts out about how they're handling search. I read everything that all the other search engines are putting out about big changes. That ends up consuming a lot of my time, is just reading through standards updates from the big search engine providers, reading through updates to pay-per-click marketing implementation. So, in order to stay up with what's going on, especially in digital, with SEO, with pay-per-click, with web, you really have to read a lot from a lot of different sources every day because things are changing so rapidly. So
it's the No BS Marketing Show. We are with our guest today, Doug North-Cook, and it's time to keep calm and hit the bullseye. Doug, I'll ask you to choose between 2 marketing or messaging classics. You tell me which one you like more and why, but you only have a few seconds to choose and hit the bullseye. You ready?
Ready.
Geico's Gecko or the Aflac Duck?
Geico's Gecko.
Elaborate.
I think Geico has hit this perfect saturation for saturation's sake ad approach that only works for them, where none of their advertising makes any sense. None of it has, there's no continuity, there's no logic, there's no even mention really of car insurance other than them just inserting their tagline into some sort of nonsense. And it seems to work really effectively. The last time I bought car insurance that wasn't attached to my current homeowner's insurance policy was Geico. Only because when I was like, oh, I need to get new car insurance, I guess I'll get Geico. And then the Aflac Duck, I think part of it is that Aflac is a more convoluted product and requires some more explanation, and I don't feel like they do an effective job of hitting that. Where with Geico, it's car insurance. Everybody knows what car insurance is. Everybody knows they need it. These are legally obligated to have it. So it doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's cheap and easy. And that's all they try to get across, and they just try to make that memorable. So if it's a caveman hitting another caveman over the head with a club, or it's 2 guys barbecuing and high-fiving and hanging in midair, or this stupid
the unskippable campaign,
right? Or this stupid gecko, walking around doing nothing. I think that's been really effective for them.
The Office or Parks and Recreation?
Parks and Recreation.
Okay. Again, I'm going to force you to elaborate on each of these.
What specifically about what their approach to?
I think both shows became part of pop culture. Both do a good job of promoting themselves. Both kind of change. The Office was first, but you see more and more of the style of the sort of making fun of itself, just from a messaging standpoint.
Right. I really like Parks and Recreation. I think just because of Aziz Ansari's character, Tom. He's one of my favorite characters on television of all time. And he's kind of this hilarious, kind of marketing character. He's always just like coming up with taglines, always has these crazy new business ideas, pretty much all of which fail. But I'm really interested in him as a personality, not just on the show, but also what he's doing now himself, where he released a book last year, did a stand-up tour, and put out a Netflix series, all that operate around one single theme and all feed into each other.
One big idea.
And
modern romance.
Yeah, exactly. And he had this, book that did
book
really
is
well.
Hilarious.
And he sold out, multiple shows at Madison Square Garden. He's like
the Netflix show is really good.
And the Netflix show is great. I mean, he's one of the biggest things happening in comedy, and that's not by accident, because he's clearly very calculated and very thoughtful in how he's approaching, doing that. And, some of those ideas and some of what he's been able to build on is the success of his character in Parks and Rec, who's this, lovable, laughable, big idea guy, which, really is just like a joke version of who Aziz Ansari clearly is, which is that he's a brilliant marketer in and of his own right. So
the one big idea focus that he has makes him a pure marketer. And his book about the modern romance and talking about how texting has changed everything for generations from this generation on that didn't have to make the phone call, didn't have to get nervous when they were dialing the number and hang up 5 times. And so I have Audible, and I thought I'll get that book on Audible, see if he reads it, and he reads it himself. So it's almost like you get a comedy routine for 12 chapters of the book. Great. And so then after that, I thought, well, I've got to at least look at the show on Netflix. And the show, it's just comical because he's making light of how technology has changed romance, and it's comical. Good stuff. Talented. One big idea. Progressives Flow or Jake from State Farm?
Oh man, I hate both of those so much. Probably Flo from State Farm, but I think they've both really missed the mark. You compare those to Geico, and they're trying to be funny and like make the jokes, but they're being like so self-referential in a way that just like up against Geico's constant onslaught of jokes, just because their commercials just aren't funny. They're just not. So I'm going to say no to both.
And that's a fair answer. People have done it before. You're not you when you're hungry, or nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger.
Nobody better lay a finger on my Butterfinger. Because I don't even know what that other one is from.
It's the Snickers one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Since you're like a technological guru, I wasn't sure which ones to put up here out of the social media outlets. So I'm going to put 3, and you can comment. Twitter, Instagram, Periscope.
Oh, good question. I would say Instagram. I constantly go back and forth about whether or not Twitter is like one of the greatest things or the worst thing, because it's like Twitter is like everything that I hate about Facebook, and that's all that it is. But there's also, it also has things that nowhere else in the world has, which is this live access to news and what's happening, and being able to see events unfolding, being able to like track where the flu is, or being able to track how, what's happening with a riot in Egypt or whatever it is. That Twitter is a unique tool for that, and that's great. But most of what happens on Twitter is celebrities being really vain and people being really nasty to celebrities. And I'm just so disinterested in that. What I prefer is Instagram, where I follow my friends and like 1 or 2 celebrities, and I can just see like, oh, a friend of mine was just in Ireland. That's an awesome picture of Ireland. It's cool that they're in Ireland. That's it. So it feels like it's just like easier to digest, and it's a little more my speed of, I want to see images, but I don't want to see, it's like a little self-curated. People are way more self-conscious about what they'll post on Instagram versus what they post on Twitter and Facebook. So I feel like people are less likely to waste my time. It's like people will just post like a whole album of photos of their new dog from 100 different angles, and that'll be all my timeline is on Facebook for like a week is the same pictures of this one person's dog. I just unfollow all those people on Instagram. So
Yes. Well, we're with Doug Northcook today. He's our guest on the No BS show, and he's an eclectic guy. I know you're, just from some of our conversations and then your Twitter page, I know you're a beer guy, and I don't know enough about beer. I just drink your basic beer, so I can't ask that on the bullseye. But I figured I'd throw in a couple of food places.
sure.
And again, you might laugh at me because I'm so basic, but choose between Franctuary or Burgatory.
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm definitely gonna have to go with Franctuary because they're a client of ours.
You got to go with who pays you.
Yeah, we did some design work for their new location downtown. We also did the aesthetics for their new food truck. But Burgatory, I really like their food. They have a really good bison burger.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the marketing and I hate the aesthetic. It feels so overdone and so I don't know what it feels like very packaged. It was just like, let's make like a cool irreverent play on religion, where I feel like Franctuary is like, they also are making a play on religion, but it's like more subtle and less, it's more tongue-in-cheek and
Yes.
less overt. So that's kind of where I land.
So I'm going to give you a chance to talk a little bit about beer because you seem to be a beer guru.
Sure.
Go ahead. What's your favorite beer?
Oh, my favorite beer. That's a good. There's this brewery called North Coast, and they make basically all of my favorite beers. But part of that, I think, is that I love their branding. They have this Belgian style beer that's called Brother Thelonious, and it has, which is a reference to Thelonious Monk and to monks who make Trappist beers. And the art on it is Thelonious Monk with a halo made out of piano keys around his head, holding a beer with sunglasses on. And it's just this perfect, when I see it, I'm just like, that's cool. If I want to be cool, I have to drink this beer, and I have to drink it right now. The beer is also delicious, but I think it's made more delicious by feeling like I can like tap into Thelonious Monk's cool while I'm drinking it. Which is clearly a total farce, but I feel cooler when I drink it. So
You have to look at the Instagram picture so you get the full appreciation of Doug Northcook. So we would move right into the sights and sounds of marketing. This episode's sights and sounds of marketing can be a little bit different, Doug.
Okay, hit me.
It's going to be Gen X meets Millennial, the DJ episode.
Okay.
Two former DJs. So this is going to be like Jay-Z talking to Drake. It's going to be like Peyton Manning talking to Cam Newton. It's going to be like Michael Jordan talking to Steph Curry.
Right, except it's two white guys.
Except it's two white guys
Got it.
talking to each other. So wait, we got to go. We got to get that reference in. Okay, so we're Larry Bird talking to whoever.
John Stockton.
To John Stockton, to whoever the good white guy is in today's NBA. All right, so both DJs, obviously from different eras, but just want to talk a little bit of how being a DJ is kind of like being a marketer.
Oh, sure.
You have to read that audience and understand the target. Let's talk a little bit about your DJ experiences.
Oh man, well, I'll talk about like the best example I have of that is I DJ'd this party, this Halloween party 2 years ago at the Carry Furnace in Braddock. That was put on by the Brew Gentlemen, the brewery down in Braddock, and the Independent Brewing Company, the local beer bar in Squirrel Hill. And they had 3 DJs, and the first DJ, and so the original plan that I was told, and if they're listening, they can just hear this and deal with it, is that the original plan was, we're going to do, the first DJ is going to like kind of keep it more mellow as people are kind of coming into the event. And then the second DJ is going to do soul and funk. And then Doug, you can do, or not you can do, but I told him I was going to do, well, that's great. I'll do a blend of 90s hip hop and soul. And so I had a Creative Records with me. I show up with this Creative Records because I was going to do all vinyl. And first DJ goes on and he plays all 80s dance hits. And I start panicking because I realize that this crowd is starting to get hyped up with all songs that they know from a very specific era that has a very specific style of dancing and definitely like appeals to kind of what I think is like the typical Pittsburgher who's just like really wants to hear Journey. They like really want to hear Journey.
They won't stop believing.
They won't stop. They'll never stop. And I just like hate playing that kind of stuff. So he does that. And then the second DJ plays all like rare soul and funk, which I would be super into, but the crowd was not. And he got booed off the stage, which I'd never seen. I'd never seen this happen. And this guy is an incredible DJ. He has an incredible record collection, a phenomenal knowledge of soul and funk records, and the stuff he was playing, I'm like, this is incredible. I wish I was down in the crowd. But the crowd had been hyped up on 80s dance music.
So now it cleaned the slate for you.
Well, what I realized is if I go out and do my set, which is like some stuff people are going to know, some stuff people aren't going to know, and is definitely more like a little bit of what is my set was what I wanted to do. It was a set for Doug. And I realized that if I go out and do a set for Doug right now, I will get booed off this stage. And at this point, there's about 15 to 1,700 people in the Carry Furnace. And so what I did is I scrapped my entire set, got a friend of mine to give me his cell phone. I used my cell phone and his cell phone, plugged them into my mixer, and mixed an entirely new set on the fly between our two cell phones. And it totally worked. And what I did was I was like, what music do the worst people want to hear? And I will just play that. And then I just kept going with that idea of just like, what are the dumbest, best dance songs I can think of? So like Thong Song by Cisco, Come On Eileen, which I think is like one of the worst songs of all time. And I just kept going with that of like, and like Big Willie Style by Will Smith. Just like worst song after worst song, and the crowd just lost their minds, and everybody danced nonstop for like 3 hours. But I felt like my soul was like slipping away from me a little bit.
Oh,
and then people are coming up and they're giving me requests for even worse songs. But you know, definitely like saved the party. But it was this moment for me, you know, very similar to marketing, where it's like, I have this idea of what I want to communicate that I think is the best thing, but that's not necessarily what the crowd wants to hear. The crowd wants to hear the hits. They want to hear something that's going to communicate to them, that's going to get them moving, that's going to get them dancing. And sometimes, yeah, you gotta swallow your pride or get booed off the stage. So,
I know I started out as a DJ, teenager, and I was also doing on-air work on a couple of radio stations, and you had this pure mentality that I was only going to play good stuff and not succumb to that. And then you have to evolve and realize that you have to really adjust based on that crowd. And as you said, if it's the typical Yunzer crowd, you know, you're going to have to play certain songs and at certain times. And just, you know, like I remember one time I played a song 3 times because these people just kept wanting to hear it. I always said I'll never play a song twice in the same night. I said, I don't care. These morons, they're going to tip me more. I'll play the same song 3 times. It was actually Gary Glitter before the Penguins played it all the time.
Oh, nice.
Oh, God. So, yeah, because this is Gen X versus Millennial. I was in a similar situation in a battle of the DJs, and I kind of had a better brand name than the other two, so I parlayed that into saying, well, I'll go on last. So you were lucky to go on last. But then I said, I need to know what they're playing beforehand, at least a general idea, because there's so many songs in the world. You just need to know what was going to go on before you. So I was at a better situation than you because I kind of had a sense of what they were going to play, and I could form my list. But I always just felt what you said, that you could, and you can really get the crowd going. A lot of times just throwing in an obscure one that only a few people will know to get everybody going changes the whole dynamic.
Right.
So it is a lot about target marketing, and it is a lot about reading the crowd. Mm-hmm. What's your worst gig?
Oh, man, worst gig. There's been a few pretty bad ones. There's been a few logistically bad ones. I did one event. It was this huge outdoor event, and it was so windy that my records started blowing off my turntable, which was ridiculous. But the worst, like, actual event, I'm trying to think. There's been a couple instances where I've like agreed to DJ parties that weren't mine, and I show up, and then I just get requests all night from drunk people.
Yes.
And if you don't play them, they get belligerent.
Yes.
And I just don't do that anymore. So anymore, if I'm gonna DJ somewhere, it's really only if I'm throwing a party. So every, once or twice a year, I'll throw a big event that's my event, and I just play whatever I want. People can still request stuff, but I'll usually just say no. But yeah, I mean, there's been a few instances where people have come up and like spilled a whole beer on me while they're like requesting me to play Alice in Chains during a dance party, and I'm just like, where do you think you are? And they'll just like keep yelling or whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I had the drunk guy who tried to make, like, think about when I started, I was 2 turntables and a microphone, like the rap song, but then I moved to some CD, and the guy thought that I was playing the turntables, and he's trying to make it skip, and I had the CD up off to the side, and it wasn't going to skip, and this guy was jumping up, and I was like a 300-pound guy just jumping, trying to make the record skip, and I kept pretending like I was nervous about the turntable, and he kept doing it. It was just classic. The crowd started getting into it.
Right.
My worst gig was probably, I was booked to DJ this wedding, and I kept saying, are you sure you want me? Because in that wedding circle, you know who plays what, and I'm like, after hearing you talk and everything, I think you want someone a little more straight or traditional, more conservative than me. And like, this crowd didn't want to do or hear anything, and they just kind of sat there. And I kept thinking, I'm still getting my money.
Right.
But it was completely uncomfortable.
Right.
So yeah, some weird gigs. So DJing is something that takes some patience. It takes the ability to think quick on your feet. I'm sure the technology today makes it much better, and you're capable of playing more stuff as opposed to the old days kind of having to carry everything that you were going to play.
Right. I mean, it's good and bad, because then you are expected to be more flexible, where, which is why sometimes I still like to show up to DJ with just a stack of records, but then people just get mad. So my wife actually DJs as well, and she's actually a lot better at that, of dealing with people and kind of changing sets on the fly to accommodate a crowd. I just get really mad, which is why I just don't do it anymore. I don't put myself in those situations. So
I like the idea of playing all the songs that you thought were the ones that are just the one-hit wonder types.
Right.
Did you get Whoomp There It Is in there?
I didn't. That would have been a good one though.
Or How Bizarre?
Not How Bizarre. I did play like Jump.
How bizarre. That year you had to play that song every time. Oh, geez. So, Doug, how can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
Oh, good question. Let's see. You can go to our company's website, which is decoderdesigns.com. You can email me at doug@decoderdesigns.com. Those are probably the 2 easiest ways to get a hold of me and our company and what we're about and what we do.
Remind them one more time about the coffee thing.
Yeah, Alva Coffee. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Coffee with Alva. And yeah, we're going to be next to the Livermore in East Liberty every Sunday in February from about 9 to 2.
Doug, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast. Visit nobullshitmarketing.biz, B-I-Z, for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for light reading? You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It really is light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions